Welcome back, or welcome, if this is your first time here. You found a quiet place for dark stories, rain outside the window, and a voice to keep you company through the night. Get comfortable. Let the world fade away. Before we begin, tell me in the comments, where are you listening from? And is this a late night for you or an early morning? And if you enjoy stories like this, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss future nights here. Story 1. What my security camera captured at 3 a.m. I used to think the silence of the woods was peaceful, until I realized it wasn't silence at all. My name is Lee, and I am telling you this story from a place of quiet, permanent terror. It started, as these things often do, with a gift. My boyfriend, Tyler, gave me a set of outdoor security cameras for my birthday. Id just moved into the old family cabin, a place my grandfather left me deep in the Adirondacks. For peace of mind, Tyler said, kissing my forehead as I unwrapped the box. At the time, I thought it was overkill. The cabin was a 30-minute drive from the nearest neighbor, a speck of faded wood and memory tucked against a relentless pine forest. Peace of mind was the last thing I needed. I'd come here to write my novel, to find quiet. The cameras, 4 little black domes, felt like an intrusion of the modern world into my rustic retreat. But I installed them to make him happy on the front porch. One on the back deck, overlooking the dense tree line. One facing the gravel driveway. And one, somewhat pointlessly, aimed at the old woodshed. The first week was idyllic. The cabin smelled of pine resin and old books. Sunlight filtered through the dusty windows in solid golden beams. I wrote during the day, drank wine by the fire at night, and slept the deep, untroubled sleep of the truly exhausted. The only sounds were the wind in the pines, the occasional scuttle of a squirrel on the roof, and the distant, lonely cry of a loon from the lake a mile away. But there were little things, details I brushed off as the quirks of an old house. The way the kitchen cupboard door would be slightly ajar in the morning, even though I was sure Id closed it. The faint, coppery smell that sometimes wafted from the stone fireplace, like old pennies and damp earth. And the footprints, not human footprints, but small, deep impressions in the soft soil at the tree line that looked almost like a child's bare feet, but with toes that were too long, too splayed. I told myself they were from a raccoon, or maybe a fox, distorted by the rain. The first notification came at 3:07 a.m. My phone, charging on the nightstand, buzzed with a soft ping. Motion detected. Backyard camera. I groaned, squinting at the blinding screen in the dark. Probably a deer. I opened the app, the night vision footage loading in grainy green and black. The view was of the back deck and the wall of trees beyond. For a few seconds, nothing. Then a shape darted from the left of the frame, a low, fast blur that vanished into the trees. It was too quick to make out, but it moved on 2 legs. My heart did a clumsy stutter. An animal. It had to be. A bear, maybe. standing up. I set the phone down, telling my racing pulse to calm down. This is why you have the cameras, Lee. They're working. The next night, another alert. 3:07 a.m. again. Motion detected, front porch camera. This time, the footage was clearer. The camera was mounted under the porch roof, looking out at the gravel drive and the dark tunnel of the road beyond. A figure stood at the very edge of the frame, where the driveway met the forest. It was tall and painfully thin, its limbs elongated and awkward. It was just standing there, facing the cabin. It didn't move. The night vision rendered its skin a sickly, pale green, and its eyes reflected the IR light with two tiny, bright pinpricks. It was too far away to see any details, but the posture was all wrong. It wasn't resting. It was waiting. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. I watched the timestamp tick from 3:07 to 3:12. For 5 full minutes, it didn't move a muscle. Then, in the blink of an eye, it was gone. Not a turn, not a step, just gone, as if it had never been there. I spent the rest of the night with every light in the cabin blazing, a knife from the block on the coffee table beside me. So, what's your biggest fear? Is it something you can see, or is it the feeling of being watched, of knowing something is out there in the dark that doesn't follow the rules? Let me know in the comments, because I used to think I knew the answer to that question. The following day was a haze of caffeine and fear. I called Tyler, my voice shaky. I think there's someone on the property. Hikers, maybe, said, his voice tinny over the poor connection. It's getting cold, people get lost. At 3 a.m., standing perfectly still for 5 minutes, he was quiet for a moment. Check the other cameras, see if it's on any other angles. Maybe it's a glitch, Lee. The internet out, there is basically 2 cans and a string. I hung up, frustration battling the cold dread in my stomach. He was right about one thing. I needed more data. I spent the day poring over every frame of footage from the previous nights. The blur from the back camera when I slowed it down frame by frame. It wasn't running into the woods. It was running out of them, toward the cabin. And in one single, frozen frame, I could see its face elongated, mouth a dark slash, those same pinprick eyes looking directly at the lens. I slammed my laptop shut. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch, facing the large back window, the knife in my lap, and my laptop open to the live feed from all 4 cameras. The digital clock read 3:06 a.m. The woods were a black void. 3:07. My muscles tensed. Nothing. 3:08. Stillness. A shaky breath escaped me. Maybe it was over. Maybe it had been a weird animal, a trick of the light, my lonely imagination fermenting in the isolation. This is the false safety, that moment where you convince yourself you've been a fool. I almost laughed at my own paranoia. I was about to close the laptop when the motion alert banner popped up. Not one. All 4, motion detected, all cameras. The screen split into 4 quadrants. On the front porch feed, the thin figure was there again, but closer now, halfway up the driveway. On the back deck feed, two more shapes emerged from the tree line, moving with a jerky, insectal gait. The woodshed camera showed nothing but the dark interior of the shed, but something was breathing inside, fogging the lens with a damp, rhythmic mist. The fourth camera, the driveway view, was pitch black. Something was standing directly in front of it, blocking the lens with its body. A low, wet clicking sound began to emanate from my laptop speakers, a sound no digital glitch could make, a biological sound. It was coming from outside, too. A syncopated rhythm from all around the cabin. Click, click, hiss. Click, click, hiss. I ran to the front door and through the deadbolt. As I did, I saw a shadow detach itself from the deeper shadows of the porch and press against the curtained window next to the door. The curtain bulged inward, outlining a long, narrow head. The clicking grew louder, more urgent. I backed away, my heel catching on the rug. I fell, the air knocked from my lungs. From my position on the floor, I could see under the gap in the back door. Several pairs of those splayed, childlike feet were standing on the deck boards, toes facing the door. They weren't moving. They were just waiting. The climax wasn't a chase. It was an invasion. The cabin, my sanctuary, became a prison. The power died with a soft sigh, plunging me into absolute blackness. The clicking stopped. In the perfect silence, I heard the back doorknob turn. Not a rattle, not a force. A slow, deliberate rotation. The deadbolt held. Then, the front doorknob turned. Then the knob on the basement door, a door I always kept locked. They were testing. They were systematic. A new sound started a gentle, persistent scraping at the window panes, like long fingernails being dragged down the glass. I crawled into the bedroom, barricaded the door with my dresser, and curled into the smallest ball I could in the closet, my phone clutched in my hand, its battery at 5. I had one last, desperate idea. I opened the security app. The cameras had battery backups. They were still recording. The live feeds were a study in horror. The figures were no longer at the periphery. They were on the porch, on the deck, their distorted faces pressed against the windows. Their features were a nightmare of stretched skin and deep hollows, their mouths wide and dark. And they were looking in, not searching, watching me. They knew where I was. One of them, on the front porch camera, slowly turned its head and looked directly into the lens. Its head tilted, bird-like. Then it raised a hand and pointed a long, bony finger right at the camera. Right at me. The final alert came through. Motion detected. Interior. The notification was for a camera I didn't own. The app showed a fifth feed, a view it never seen before. It was a grainy, fisheye lens perspective of a dark room. It took me 10 seconds of paralyzing confusion to understand. It was a view of this bedroom, from the smoke detector on the ceiling. I was looking at myself, a small, huddled shape in the closet. The feed had a timestamp. It was live. The copper smell from the fireplace flooded the closet, thick and choking. The scraping at the windows ceased. In the utter, profound quiet, I heard the distinct sound of the dresser being slowly, easily pushed away from the bedroom door. I never heard the closet door open. The story ends not with a scream, but with a realization. They weren't trying to get in. They were letting me know they were already here. And the worst part isn't the watching, or the clicking, or the things that look almost human. The worst part is that they left the cameras running. So you can see everything. So I can see everything. I'm still here in the cabin. The doors are unlocked now. The cameras are always on. And every night at 3:07 a.m., I smile for the lens. We all do. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you felt that chill down your spine, you are not alone. The unknown is the most fertile ground for terror. If you want to help this channel explore more dark corners and unsolved mysteries, please hit that like button. It really helps the algorithm. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you don't miss our next journey into the unsettling. And tell me in the comments would you have watched the footage, or would you have run? Story 2. The door I should have never opened. I still have nightmares about the way the doorknob turned by itself. My name is Lee, and I need to tell you about the night I learned that some inheritances are curses, not gifts. It all started when my grandfather passed away and left me his remote cabin in the pine forests of the Pacific Northwest. The lawyer's letter called it a place of solace, a quiet retreat from my hectic city life. I saw it as a free vacation home, a chance to finally write the novel I'd been putting off for years. I loaded up my car, left my boyfriend Tyler with a promise to call every night, and drove for hours into a deepening twilight, the trees swallowing the road whole. The cabin was exactly as I remembered from childhood summers. Sturdy log walls, a mossy shingle roof, and a deep wraparound porch. But the memories were warm, and the reality was cold. The key stuck in the lock, finally turning with a gritty, metallic shriek. The air inside was stale, and carried a faint, sweet-rotten smell I couldn't place, like old flowers and damp earth. And the silence. It wasn't peaceful. It was a thick, listening silence, broken only by the groan of old timber settling. I shrugged it off. Old houses have personalities, right? I spent the first evening lighting every lamp, building a fire in the stone hearth, and trying to fill the space with the sound of my own voice, talking to myself as I unpacked. There was one door in the main living area, tucked beside the fireplace, that was locked. A heavy, old-fashioned skeleton key was missing from its hook above the frame. Grandpa must have kept his tools or hunting gear in there, I figured. I made a mental note to ask Tyler to bring a lockpick set when he visited next weekend. The first night, I slept fitfully. The forest was too loud. Branches scraped the roof. Things moved in the undergrowth. At one point, I jolted awake, certain I'd heard 3 distinct, slow knocks on the front door. I lay frozen, my heart a frantic bird in my chest, until dawn's gray light seeped through the curtains. Nothing. Just the wind, I told myself. Just the damn wind. The days were better. I'd write on the porch, drink too much coffee, and take long walks, though I never strayed far from the sight of the chimney smoke. The woods felt watchful. I'd catch a flicker of movement from the corner of my eye, but when I turned, there'd be nothing but trees. The smell from that first day would come and go, stronger near the locked door. By the third day, I started talking to the cabin. Okay, you win, you're a creepy. But you're a also mine, so cut it out. All right, before this gets any worse, let me ask you guys something. Have you ever been in a place that just felt wrong? Not like obviously haunted, but just off. Like the air is heavier, or the shadows don't quite line up. Tell me in the comments. It's a lonely feeling, and right now, I could use the company. The knocks returned on the fourth night. Tap, 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 not on the front door this time, on the window beside my bed. I didn't move. I just stared at the black pane, seeing only the reflection of my own wide, terrified eyes. The knocking moved, tracing a slow line across the glass, as if something was dragging a single knuckle along it. Then it stopped. I must have fallen asleep from sheer exhaustion, because I woke to the sound of something scratching. Not outside, inside. It was a soft, persistent, grating sound, like a dog needing to be let out. It was coming from behind the locked door. I crept into the living room, a poker from the fireplace clutched in my sweat-slick hand. The scratching stopped the moment my foot hit the creaky floorboard in front of the door. I stood there for 10 minutes, hearing nothing but my own breath. False alarm. Cabin noises. I was letting isolation get to me. The next morning, I found the key. It was lying in the middle of the kitchen table, which I had wiped clean before going to bed. A tarnished, iron skeleton key, cold to the touch. My blood ran cold. Tyler hadn't visited. No one had. I called him, my voice trembling. He told me I was working too hard, that I should come home. But a stubborn, morbid curiosity had taken root. This was my house. I wasn't going to be chased out by a prank, or whatever this was. I took the key. It felt unnaturally heavy. I approached the locked door. The sweet-rotten smell was overpowering here, cloying and thick in my throat. I slid the key into the lock. It turned with a smooth, oiled clunk that was far too quiet. The door swung inward silently. The room was small, windowless, and empty, except for a single piece of furniture. An ornate, floor-length mirror in a tarnished silver frame, leaning against the far wall. That was it. No tools, no taxidermy, just dust and this giant old mirror. I laughed, a shaky sound of relief. All this fear over a storage room for a stupid mirror. Grandpa was probably too sentimental to throw out some ugly heirloom. I stepped inside to get a better look. My reflection was murky, the silver backing degraded. I looked pale, my eyes dark. I waved, and the reflection waved back. Of course it did. But then I frowned. I was wearing my gray sweatshirt. In the mirror, was wearing the white t-shirt Id slept in the first night. A trick of the light. The glass was dirty. I leaned closer. The reflection leaned closer too, but it was smiling. A wide, strained smile I wasn't making. I stumbled back, my shoulder hitting the door jamb. The reflection's smile vanished, its face now a perfect mimic of my own shock. I slammed the door shut, locked it, and threw the key into the woods. I spent the day packing my car, my hands shaking so badly I could barely zip my suitcase. I was leaving. The novel could be written somewhere with Wi-Fi and neighbors. As twilight fell, I carried the last box out. I just had to use the bathroom one last time. I left the front door wide open, the car's headlights cutting a path to my escape. When I came out of the bathroom, the front door was closed. Not just closed. Bolted from the inside with an iron bolt Id never seen before. Rust flaking onto my fingers when I tried to shove it open. The car keys were on the kitchen table, and from the living room, I heard a slow, deliberate creak. The door to the mirror room was open. The hallway was dark, but a faint, greenish light spilled from within, and I could see a figure standing just inside, silhouetted against the glow. It was my shape, my height, but it was wrong. Its movements were jerky, like a puppet learning to walk. It took a step into the hall. Lee, it whispered, but the voice was mine, pulled from a memory, flat and toneless. I backed into the kitchen, grabbing a knife from the block. "Get out," I screamed, my voice cracking. The thing stepped fully into the firelight. It was me. Down to the freckle on my jaw, the chip in my front tooth from a childhood fall. But its eyes were black, liquid pools. And that terrible, strained smile was back, stretching its face too wide. It tilted its head, studying me. "I'm staying," it said with my voice. "You can go." It pointed a long, pale finger toward the bolted front door. As it pointed, the iron bolt slid back on its own with a heavy thud. The invitation was clear. The terror was a cold flood in my veins, screaming at me to run, to take the escape offered. But a deeper, more primal fear seized me. If I ran, this thing would be here, in my grandfather's house, wearing my face. What would it do when Tyler came looking? What would it become? I didn't run. I charged, the knife raised. It didn't flinch. It just kept smiling. I swung, and the blade passed right through it as if through smoke. A freezing cold enveloped my hand, shooting up my arm. It laughed, a dry, rasping sound nothing like my laugh. Its hand shot out, not to hit me, but to grasp my wrist. The cold was agony, a burning frostbite. It leaned in, its black eyes swallowing my reflection. "Too late," it breathed. "You looked. You always look." I wrenched myself free, stumbling back. It didn't follow. It just stood there, smiling, as I fumbled with the front door, fell out onto the porch, and scrambled to my car. I drove without headlights for the first mile, terrified of seeing that face in my rearview mirror. I drove until I saw the lights of a gas station, and I sobbed with relief. I called Tyler from the payphone. I told him everything, babbling, hysterical. He listened, quiet. When I finished, there was a long pause. Then he said, his voice calm and slow, "Lee, honey, that sounds awful. But you're safe now. Just come home. I'm making your favorite pasta. I'll leave the door unlocked for you." The line went dead. I stood there, the receiver buzzing in my hand. Tyler hates pasta, and he would never, ever leave a door unlocked. I dropped the phone. I didn't go home. I checked into a motel 50 miles away under a fake name. I'm writing this from a library computer. I don't know what came out of that cabin. I don't know if it's wearing my face for Tyler right now. All I know is this: when I look in any mirror, I have to force myself to smile, just to make sure it's still me. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you felt that chill down your spine, you're not alone. Please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. It really helps the channel. And subscribe for more true horror stories every week. Stay curious, but maybe think twice before you unlock that strange door. See you in the next one. Story 3. Why I never trusted my family's cabin. I used to think the worst sound in the world was the silence of being truly alone. But I was wrong. The worst sound is hearing someone else's voice in that silence when you know, with a cold certainty that settles in your bones, that you are supposed to be the only one there. My name is Marcus, and this is about the week I spent at my family's cabin, the place my grandfather left me in his will, and the reason I will never, ever go back. The cabin was a postcard of rustic charm, nestled in a dense ring of ancient pines at the end of a 2-mile dirt track. I arrived on a Sunday afternoon, the late autumn sun struggling to pierce the thick canopy. The air smelled of damp earth and decaying leaves. The key, a heavy iron skeleton key, turned with a satisfying clunk. Inside, it was exactly as I remembered from childhood visits. Worn leather armchairs, a stone fireplace big enough to stand in, shelves lined with dusty hardcovers and odd trinkets. Grandpa was a collector of the strange of fossils, twisted pieces of driftwood that looked like grasping hands, a taxidermy fox with one glass eye missing. It was charming, I told myself. Quaint. But as I hauled my bags inside, I noticed 3 things. First, all the mirrors in the main living area were covered with thin, yellowed sheets. Second, a heavy, sweet smell, like overripe fruit and damp soil, clung to the air despite the obvious cleanliness of the place. And third, the sheer, oppressive weight of the quiet. No bird song, no rustle of squirrels, just the creak of old timber and the thud of my own heart. I shrugged it off as city boy nerves. I was here to disconnect, to write, to claim my inheritance in spirit as well as on paper. The first night was uneventful, just the settling sounds of an old house. I built a fire, cracked open a beer, and felt a surge of contentment. This was mine. On the second day, I decided to explore the basement, a place strictly off limits in my youth. The door was a solid slab of oak, bolted from the outside. I slid the bolt back. It was stiff. Unused for year sand, descended the rough-hewn stone steps. The basement was a single, low-ceilinged room, cold and smelling of mildew and something metallic. In the center, resting on the packed earth floor, was a large, flat stone, almost like an altar. Carved into its surface were intricate, spiraling symbols that made my eyes ache if I looked at them too long. Arranged around it in a perfect circle were 7 small, smooth stones, each painted with a single, crude black eye. A shiver, completely disconnected from the basement's chill, traced my spine. I backed up the stairs and rebolted the door. Grandpa was just eccentric, I repeated. A folk artist, maybe. That night, the sounds began. Not the groans of the house, but distinct, deliberate sounds. A slow, dragging shuffle across the wooden floor in the hall outside my bedroom door. A wet, rhythmic tap, tap, tap against the window pane, though I was on the 2nd floor, and there was no tree branch near the glass. I lay rigid in bed, my breath fogging in the suddenly frigid air. I told myself it was the wind. I told myself I was dreaming. But here's something I want to ask you all before I go further. Have you ever had a moment where a familiar place, a safe place, suddenly felt alien and hostile, like the very walls had turned against you? That feeling of your sanctuary becoming your prison is a special kind of terror. Let me know in the comments what your experience was. The next morning, in the harsh, cowardly light of day, I tried to rationalize. Animals in the walls, pipes, my own overactive imagination, fueled by isolation and the creepy basement. I decided to clear the covered mirrors, thinking the sheets were contributing to the gloom. As I pulled the cloth from the large oval mirror above the fireplace, the fabric, brittle with age, disintegrated in my hands. My reflection stared back, pale and sleep-deprived. And then, for just a fraction of a second, the reflection didn't move when I did. It remained still, its head tilted slightly, a small, curious smile on its face that was absolutely not on mine. I gasped, stumbling back, and when I looked again, it was just me, wide-eyed and terrified. A trick of the light. Stress. The false safety arrived on the 4th day. The sun was out, the strange sounds had ceased, and the cloying smell had faded. I felt foolish. I'd been spooking myself with my grandfather's oddities and the power of suggestion. I even went back down to the basement, armed with a flashlight and bravado. The stone altar was just a stone. The painted eyes on the little rocks were just childish daubs. I laughed, a hollow sound that echoed in the damp space. I decided to celebrate my return to sanity with a long walk in the woods before dusk. The woods, however, were different. The paths I remembered were overgrown or seemed to shift. The trees, which had always felt like silent guardians, now felt like a watching audience, and I kept seeing them stones. Not the ones from the basement, but others, just like them. Smooth, palm-sized stones with a single black eye painted on them, placed on tree stumps, nestled in roots, balanced on branches at eye level. They marked a path leading me deeper. The sun dipped below the tree line, and the temperature plummeted. Panic, pure and electric, began to buzz in my veins. I turned to run back, but every direction looked the same, and every tree now seemed to have its own watching stone. I was lost, and the forest was no longer silent. Whispers, layered and countless, brushed against my ears, not in a language I knew, but in one I felt in my marrow, a language of hunger and welcome. I ran, blind with terror, branches tearing at my clothes, until I burst into the clearing where the cabin stood. Light glowed from the windows. Safety. I slammed the door behind me, leaning against it, gasping for breath. The fire was roaring in the hearth, though I hadn't lit it. The sweet, rotten smell was back, so thick I could taste it at the back of my throat. And all the covered mirrors, the sheets were gone. Every mirror gleamed, reflecting the firelight. "You found the markers," a voice said. It was my voice, but wrongdoer, older, laced with a gleeful malice. I turned slowly. There, sitting in my grandfather's leather armchair, was my reflection. But it wasn't in a mirror. It sat in the chair, solid and real, wearing my clothes, but its eyes were the polished black of the stones. It smiled Grandpa's smile, not mine. He was so good at following the rules, it said, rising. Its movements were a fluid, imperfect mimicry of my own, like a puppet learning its strings. Never look in the mirrors after dark. Always keep the basement sealed. Feed the stones in the woods once a season. Simple rules. He lived a long, long time. But you uncovered everything. You invited me in. I tried to speak, to scream, but my throat was sealed shut by fear. The thing that wore my face took a step closer, and the room darkened, the firelight seeming to shrink away from it. He grew tired, it whispered, its breath smelling of turned earth and old blood. He wanted to be collected, so he left the cabin to the one he thought most like him, his blood, and you walked right in. Now, it's my turn to go out. It lunged, not with physical force, but with a wave of profound, soul-chilling cold, and a pressure that filled my skull with those ancient, hungry whispers. I fell back, my vision tunneling. The last thing I saw before blacking out was my own face, smiling down at me with grandfather's kind, twinkling eyes, now utterly black. I woke at dawn, on the cold floor of the cabin. It was empty, silent. The fire was ash. The mirrors were just glass. I was alone. I fled, leaving everything behind, driving until the gas ran out, and then running some more. I am in a motel room now, hundreds of miles away. I am safe. I have to believe I am safe. The doctors say it was a psychotic break brought on by stress and isolation. They prescribe medication and talk therapy. I nod and take the pills. But sometimes, at night, I catch a whiff of something sweet and rotten on the air. And I have this compulsion. I've started collecting smooth, round stones. I keep them in a bag under my bed. My hands sometimes itch for black paint, and whenever I look in a mirror too quickly, I fear ill see not my own tired eyes, but the calm, contented look my grandfather always had, right before he'd tell me a story about the old, watchful things that live in the deep, quiet places of the world. I think he's finally resting. But the thing is, I don't feel tired at all anymore. I feel like I am just beginning to wake up. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you felt that chill, that sense of something lurking just outside the frame, then you understand. Please give this video a thumbs up if you want to hear more tales of lingering horrors. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next story. And remember, the past never really stays buried, especially when it's waiting for you to claim it. Take care and stay aware of what you inherit. Story 4. The highway that erases travelers at night. I still see the green exit sign in my nightmares, and I know if I ever see it again, I won't be coming back. My name is Lee, and this is what happened on Highway 17, the night I learned some roads are hungry. It was supposed to be a simple drive. My best friend Priya had called, her voice shaky, saying Shed left her fiancé and was holed up in a motel in the middle of nowhere. I just need to see a friendly face, Lee. Please. So I packed an overnight bag, filled a thermos with coffee, and pointed my old sedan north on the 17, a 2-lane highway that cuts through dense, ancient forest. The GPS said 3 hours. I should have known better than to trust it. The normalcy of it all was the worst part, in hindsight. The familiar hum of the tires, the way my headlights carved a tunnel through the oppressive darkness, the occasional glow of a distant farmhouse light. But there were details, tiny cracks in the reality of the drive. The GPS signal had been flickering in and out for the last 20 minutes. The radio, tuned to a classic rock station, would occasionally spit out a burst of static that sounded like whispering before snapping back to a song. And the trees, they didn't just line the road, they felt like a wall, a living, watching barrier of pine. And fur so thick, my headlights couldn't penetrate more than a few feet. I remember thinking it was like driving through a deep, dark throat. Been driving for what felt like an eternity, the coffee gone, and a dull headache blooming behind my eyes when I saw the first sign. It was a standard green highway sign, reflective letters gleaming in my beams. Exit 47 Miller's Hollow 1 mile. I frowned, checking my phone. No service. My GPS was frozen, displaying a nonsensical location in the middle of a blank, gray field. I hadn't passed an exit in over 40 minutes. Miller's Hollow, I muttered to the empty car. Sounds charming. A part of me, the sensible part that had read too many true crime stories, screamed to keep driving. But a bigger part was tired. My bladder was full, and the thought of a gas station coffee and a real bathroom was too tempting. I signaled, though there was no one to see it, and took the exit. The ramp curved sharply down, away from the highway, and the sound of my tires changed from the smooth hum of asphalt to the crunch of gravel and broken pavement. The exit dumped me onto a narrow, poorly maintained road that wound deeper into the woods. No streetlights, no reflective markers, just my headlights and the crushing darkness. After about a mile, I saw a flickering neon sign, Gas Food Lodging. The building underneath it was a single-story, L-shaped motel straight out of the 1950s, paint peeling, with a flickering fluorescent light over a door marked office. A single, old-style pump stood off to the side. It was the most beautiful sight I'd ever seen. I pulled up to the pump, the gravel crunching loudly in the absolute silence. Getting out, the air was cold and still, smelling of damp pine. And something else, something faintly metallic, like old coins. The office was unlocked. A bell jingled feebly as I entered. The room was warm, stuffy, and smelled of mothballs and stale cigarettes. An old CRT TV on a stand played silent, fuzzy snow. Behind the counter was a man so still I thought he was a mannequin at first. He was elderly, with thin white hair and glasses that magnified his pale, watery eyes. He didn't smile. "Fill it up, please," I said, my voice too loud in the quiet. He nodded slowly, taking a key from a hook behind him. "Pay when you're done. Restrooms around back. Doors open." The restroom was as bleak as expected, but functional. As I washed my hands, I looked in the mirror. I looked exhausted, shadows under my eyes. And then I noticed it. Scratched into the bottom corner of the mirror, faint but deliberate, was a phrase. D-O-N-T, look at them. Just drive. A chill, unrelated to the cold, trickled down my spine. Kids, I told myself. Dumb kids playing a prank. When I got back to my car, it was full. The old man was standing by the driver's side door, holding out a handwritten receipt. "That will be 42 even," he said. As I fumbled for my card, he spoke again, his voice low. "You heading back to the highway?" "Yes, just needed a pit stop." He looked past me into the dark woods. "You see the green sign, the exit sign?" "Yeah." "No," he said, his magnified eyes finally meeting mine. "The other one, the small green sign. If you see it, don't stop. Don't even slow down. You just keep driving, you hear? Don't look at the lights." Before I could ask what he meant, he turned and shuffled back into the office, closing the door with a firm click. The open sign flicked off. I stood there, alone in the parking lot, the silence now feeling heavy and intentional. My skin was crawling. I got in my car, locked the doors, and sat for a minute, my heart hammering. "He's just a creepy old man in a creepy old town," I said aloud, needing to hear a voice. "Probably hates outsiders." I put the car in drive and followed the road back the way I came, desperate to see the highway's familiar asphalt. But the road didn't seem right. It was narrower. The trees pressed in closer. And after 10 minutes of driving, I should have reached the on-ramp. I didn't. Instead, the road ended at a T-junction I was sure hadn't been there before. A small, dented green sign pointed left. Highway 175 MI. It pointed right. Miller's Hollow Pop. 127. This was the sign he meant. The choice was obvious. I turned left. The 5 miles stretched into an eternity. The forest here was different. The trees were gnarled, twisted things, and I started to see things between them. Not shapes, exactly. More like suggestions of movement. A darker patch of shadow that slid behind a trunk when my lights hit it. Once, I saw a pair of faint, silvery lights like eyes, high up in a branch. They were gone in a blink. My hands were clenched on the wheel, knuckles white. And then my headlights caught it. A figure standing in the middle of the road. I slammed on the brakes, my car skidding on the gravel shoulder. My heart tried to punch its way out of my chest. It was a person, a man, dressed in what looked like vintage clothing, a suit from another era. He was standing perfectly still, facing me, his features indistinct in the gloom. But I could see he was smiling. A wide, unnaturally wide smile. He didn't move to get out of the way. He just stood there, smiling. This is where I have to ask you guys something. Have you ever been driving at night and seen something, a person, an animal, a shape on the road that just didn't feel right? That made your instincts scream before your brain could even process why. Comment below. For me, in that moment, every primal alarm bell was ringing. I couldn't go forward. Going around him meant driving into the ditch and possibly getting stuck. I made a decision that probably saved my life. I threw the car into reverse, spun it around in a clumsy 3-point turn, and gunned it back the way I came, toward the T-junction. In my rearview mirror, I saw the figure still standing there, but now his head was turned, watching me go, that smile still etched on his dark face. Terror had me in a vice. I flew back to the junction, and without thinking, took the right turn toward Miller's Hollow. Maybe there were other people there. A police station. Anything. The town, when I reached it, was a cluster of a dozen buildings lining a single main street. Every window was dark. Not a single porch light was on. The only illumination came from my headlights, sweeping over boarded-up storefronts and a rusted playground. The population sign was a lie. This place was a ghost town. I stopped the car in the middle of the street, hyperventilating. I was lost. My phone was dead. It'd seen something unexplainable, and I was trapped in a dead town. Then I saw the light. A soft, warm, golden light spilling from the window of a small house at the end of the street. A living room light. Relief, sweet and dizzying, flooded me. Someone was home. Maybe they could help, give me directions, let me use a landline. I drove to the house, a cute little cottage with a white picket fence, and practically ran to the front door. I knocked. The door opened almost immediately. A woman stood there, middle-aged, with a kind face and an apron. The smell of baking bread wafted out. "Oh, you poor thing," she said, her voice warm with concern. "You look lost. Come in, come in. It's not safe to be out on these roads at night. I I almost cried. The warmth of the house, the normalcy of it, was a balm. She ushered me into a cozy living room, offering me tea. "My name is Helen," she said. "You just sit right there. I'll get the tea, and my husband, Gerald, will be in from the back in a moment. He can help you with your car." I sank into an overstuffed armchair, the tension beginning to leak from my shoulders. This was safety. This was rescue. The old man at the gas station was just a lunatic. The smiling man was I didn't know, but I was safe now. As Helen bustled in the kitchen, I looked around the room. It was perfectly normal. Family photos on the mantel, a knitted blanket on the sofa, a bookshelf. My eyes drifted to the photos. They were all black and white, stiff, formal portraits. A wedding photo, a family with 2 children, all period clothing, early 1900s. Quaint, I thought. They're history buffs. Then I looked closer at the wedding photo. The bride was Helen. The groom was a man with a familiar, wide smile. The same smile I'd seen on the man in the road. My blood turned to ice. I stood up slowly, the cozy room now feeling like a staged set. I heard a creak from the hallway. Gerald was coming. I didn't want to see his face. I backed toward the front door, my eyes locked on the hallway entrance. A shadow fell across the living room floor first, long and distorted. Then he stepped into view. It was him, the man from the road. He was wearing a different suit now, but the smile was identicala stretched, rictus grin that didn't touch his dead, black eyes. Helen came out of the kitchen, holding a tea tray. She was still smiling kindly, but her eyes had changed. They were flat and hungry. "Lee, dear," she said, "you should have just kept driving. Now you've seen the sign. Now you've seen the lights. I didn't think." I screamed, turned, and yanked the front door open. I sprinted for my car. Behind me, I heard no footsteps, only a soft, whispering rustle, like dry leaves skittering across pavement. I fumbled with the keys, got the door open, and started the car. In my headlights, I saw them. They were standing on the porch now, Helen and Gerald, side by side. And they were not alone. From the dark doors and windows of every other house on the street, figures were emerging. Dozens of them. Men, women, even children, all dressed in clothes from various decades, all wearing that same terrible, welcoming smile. They began to walk toward my car, not with menace, but with a dreadful, patient inevitability. I hit the gas, tearing back down the main street, past the smiling crowd. I found the road out of town and followed it, sobbing, praying it would lead to the highway. I drove for what felt like hours, the forest a menacing blur. Just as I felt the last of my hope dying, I saw the green glow of an exit sign up ahead. Exit 47 Miller's Hollow 1 mile. It was the same sign. I was back where I started. A sob of despair ripped from my throat. But I remembered the old man's words. Don't stop. Don't even slow down. I pressed the accelerator to the floor, shooting past the exit ramp at 80 miles per hour. As I passed it, I made the mistake of glancing in my rearview mirror. The exit ramp was there, but beyond it, where the motel and the town should have been, was only a vast, impenetrable darkness. And in that darkness, I saw countless pairs of soft, golden lights, like the welcoming lights of a house, twinkling in the deep woods. They were all the lights I had almost followed. I drove until dawn, until my gas tank was nearly empty, and I found a truck stop bathed in the harsh, beautiful light of morning. I called Priya from a payphone. She was fine, confused. Shed never called me. Shed never been to a motel. I never reported it. What would I say? I got lost and was invited to tea by ghosts. The police found my car a week later, abandoned on the shoulder of Highway 17, 50 miles from where I finally stopped. They said I must have been disoriented, suffering from highway hypnosis. I let them believe it, but I know the truth. Highway 17 is a hungry road. It offers exits to places that don't exist on any map, places that are always waiting, always welcoming. They use your fatigue, your need for comfort, your fear of the dark as bait. They hang a small green sign and light a warm, golden window. And if you're tired enough, scared enough, lonely enough, y'all take the exit. I still drive, but never at night. And if I ever see a small, dented green sign pointing to a town I've never heard of, surrounded by a forest that feels too deep and too quiet, I won't wonder what's down that road, because I know they're always baking bread, and they always have an extra place set at the table. Thanks for listening to my story. If you felt that chill, that sense of dread, you understand why I have to share this. Please do me a favor, hit that like button if this story got under your skin. It helps more people find these warnings. Subscribe to the channel and ring the bell so you don't miss the next tale from the shadows. And most importantly, in the comments below, tell me, what's the one roadside attraction or strange detour y'all never, ever take again? Drive safe, everyone. And remember, not all exits lead you back. Thank you for listening and spending part of your night here. If you enjoyed this narration, please leave a comment, like the video, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. And if you know someone who enjoys falling asleep to rain and dark stories, please share this with them. The rain will continue. Rest well.